Welcome to a special edition of Money You Should Ask. We're here live at FinCon, Austin, Texas. I'm so excited today because our next guest is Chelsea Norton from NEFE, the National Endowment for Financial Education. Well, it's another exciting episode of Money You Should Ask, and thanks to NEFE.org, the National Endowment of Financial Education, for sponsoring live podcasting at FinCon 2021. Our next guest is Chelsea Norton. She is the Managing Director of Marketing at NEFE, the National Endowment for Financial Education, where she leads corporate marketing strategy and executing tactics for the organization's educational and consumer-focused resources. She also manages the search engine optimization strategy for NEFE's 9 websites, increasing each site's online market share and reaching more than 1 million users every year. Chelsea brings a passion for financial capability to her work. Having been employed for several years in her early career at a small credit union as a collections specialist and loan officer, she understands firsthand how financial matters encompass the lives and well-being of Americans today. Chelsea is busy supporting the micro chain of organic restaurants that she co-owns with her partner. She's also an avid athlete who enjoys weightlifting, running, CrossFit, mountain biking, and hiking. Chelsea, thanks so much for joining.
Hi, Bob. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, I'm excited because financial literacy is sort of a thing.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a problem.
Yes.
And let me ask you this. Did you, as a young child, always say, I want to get into finances, I want to get into counseling? Like, what young Chelsea want to do before she got to NEFE?
You know, it is really interesting, but I do feel like some of the fun kind of formative memories that I have of from my childhood were when my mom would take us to the credit union and we would get to make a little deposit into our kid club account. And that's the credit union that I started working for when I was old enough to get a job. I said,
Wow.
I want to work for that credit union when I was 7, and I did. So yes, I have been a money nerd my whole life.
And so to that point, though, did your mom, so obviously she took you to the credit union to make your deposits. Was money talked about in a positive way? It sounds like there was support there.
Yeah, absolutely. My family really did model kind of good open communication about finances. My father was the sole provider. My mother was the one who kind of managed the home and managed finances. And she set a really good example for me. She would, sit out every month and have her little kind of budget, paperwork, and have her she had a recipe card box that she kind of kept all of her bills in and things like that. And I saw her really being proactive about her money and money management in the household. And even though my parents were both first generation college students and they really didn't have a lot when I was a child, they showed me how to be frugal, and they also showed me how to really pursue what I wanted and to become successful for myself. So yeah, I was very fortunate.
That's so awesome. And is there one memory of a financial mantra that was in your house that mom or dad said?
I mean, definitely my family really did practice putting things in savings before we had fun with any of our money. So we had little jars that we kept in the kitchen underneath one of the counters. And when we got $10, we had to take, 3 of those dollars and put them in savings. And then we had to take another of those dollars and put it into a donation fund for charity. And then we were allowed to spend the rest. So definitely feel like that kind of pay yourself first, save first, give something, and then you have the rest of that money to use for other, for whatever you want. That was taught to us from a young age.
And how do you, because I hear this from a lot of people, I pay myself first, I put it in the savings, and now an emergency came up.
Yeah.
And so I'm just going to dip into that money and then I'll pay myself back later. Like, when are we paying ourselves and when are we self-destructing our money that we're putting aside?
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, your emergency savings is for emergencies. And so that means I fight with this myself. Like it's not like the untouchable, like you should never touch it and you should feel super bad about it when you have to, because that's what it's there for, right? So, I do think it's a practice of kind of having compassion for yourself and saying is this legitimate? Like, is this a need that I need it for? And maybe that's also about kind of sketching that out for yourself when you create the account, like this is when I feel like it's a true emergency and I should take out this money. If it's a medical thing, if it's a fun thing that I really feel like is a life experience that I really want to have, that's on my bucket list, and I feel like I can build that back up confidently. I mean, it doesn't always have to be like a tragedy.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, I think like set those rules for yourself and then stick by them. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And why is financial education, financial literacy important to you? I mean, obviously you're working for a foundation that really promotes this.
Yeah.
But you have to be, well, my belief is if you're working for a nonprofit, you have to be passionate about what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
And what you're bringing. And so what is your passion around financial literacy?
When I worked for this credit union, I worked for them for like 7 years, and it led up into the 2008 financial crisis. And so, and at the time I was collecting debt for the credit union, and I really saw firsthand people's lives just destroyed, and sometimes overnight by, this big thing that was kind of beyond their control. And so it just really kind of resonated really deeply with me that like money can really make or break somebody's like emotional well-being, mental well-being, and like physical life. And I just really wanted to, from that moment, like see if I could have a positive impact in some way.
Yeah.
And NEFE, NEFE's all about providing, guidelines for what is effective financial education, and kind of on a broader scale, like helping kind of elevate the financial well-being of people in general. And so I feel like I get to do kind of the flip side of what I did in the past. That was really difficult work, and I really love what I do at NEFE, and it's very challenging, but I just feel like so uplifted every day because we really are just trying to make a difference, trying to kind of shed light, bring proper research to the field, really just help people be better and do better.
I think that's so awesome. And for me personally, when I wrote The Money Nerve and really started doing podcasting and workshops, was to help remove the stigma of shame around this financial lack of literacy.
Yeah.
And the other big thing that I've discovered is so many people feel like alone. They feel so isolated. Mm-hmm. And it's not something we run around saying, oh my God, I just filed bankruptcy. And oh my debt's at 100,000. And I just lost everything in the stock market. It's not stuff we just share openly.
No.
There's so much shame around it.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I know that we're going to talk about today, and because this is an exciting topic to me, is financial infidelity.
Yep.
And I was sharing with you, I had somebody come to me who the mom would buy new things and then hide them in a closet for a month, and all the kids were in on it. The kids were in on it, right?
Yeah.
Some collusion there. And the mom would wait a month, wear stuff, and then when the dad would say, wait a minute, that's new. No, I've had it for a month or two.
That's so sneaky.
It's so sneaky. And is this common? Like, I think, because I used to have employees that worked for me that would say, give me my bonus check in a separate check so my spouse doesn't know about it. Yeah. This is what you're talking about, I think, when you talk about financial infidelity.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, you're correct. It is something that's really common. So NEFE's been really following kind of this topic of financial infidelity for over a decade. We field polls and ask people questions about, the kinds of things that they keep to themselves, that they maybe keep from their partner, that they're doing, that they're not letting their partner or spouse know about. And we found our most recent poll results are going to actually be coming out and published on NEFE.org in the next few weeks. But the most recent poll kind of is in line with our prior polls, which shows that about 1 in 3 people admit to some kind of financial infidelity or financial deception. And what's interesting about that is also 84% of those respondents say that it impacted their relationship in some way. So this is not, right? This is not a harmless thing that people are doing. And it is really widespread and really common.
Well, I know people out there that are listening. And yes, if you have 5 credit cards that your spouse doesn't know about, or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or whoever you're in a relationship with, that's sort of some infidelity.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to ask a question because there is a fine line, I think, too.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm a person that's in a situation where there might be domestic violence.
Sure.
Right? I do actually need to protect myself.
Absolutely.
And I just bring that up because to me, that's a clear situation where you do need to take care of yourself. And I want to really separate that there are situations where you might need to keep some information close to the cuff.
That's absolutely right. Yes. And we definitely would never want someone that feels like they need to do that because they're planning for their own safety to feel like they should feel guilty about that or that they're doing something wrong. I mean, when we're talking about financial infidelity, we really are talking about like couples that are trying to make it together. And that's not something that you can do if you're in an abusive relationship of any kind. So, in those cases, I would say that's something that's a necessity for that person's personal safety. And that is not what we're talking about.
Yeah. And it's important to name that because
Absolutely.
some people out there might go, oh, no,
Mm-hmm.
it's a different situation. One of the things that I've discovered with clients when they come in for a tax meeting or when I do workshops with people around money, couples, they will say, Bob, tell us who's right on this or that situation. And I'll always say before I answer, are you on the same team or is somebody trying to get a win here?
Mm-hmm.
And what's the benefit of the win in terms of this relationship that involves two people?
Right.
And it's shocking to them. They're mortified
Mm-hmm.
when I call them out. But is this something that sounds familiar?
I mean, absolutely. It's the same kind of game. And that's really the question that you have to ask yourself, I think, as like being a partner or being in a relationship. Like, are you trying to win here or are you actually really trying to like do something kind of together as a couple, right? So,
Right.
I mean, financial infidelity, it can start as something that's kind of benign, as something that you feel like is a really small thing. Like maybe it's just one purchase that you don't talk about, you don't share. But the real question is like, is there a rift in kind of your communication? Have you not talked about these values as a couple? Have you not had those conversations that you should be having? And is that what's kind of leading to this? And then also it's a slippery slope. So
Right.
it could start with one transaction, but it could lead to hiding debts, right?
Right.
And when you get into those kinds of things, I mean, that starts to get into the kind of things that actually create separations and divorce and the things that could really end the relationship, which is why money is cited as such a common reason that people don't stay together.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's interesting. I find that a lot of people, if I say, do you want to have a conversation about money? They actually think I said, do you want to have a fight about money?
Totally.
Right.
Yes.
Do you want to argue about money?
Right.
And so there's already a trigger for a lot of people because in some families there is money means conflict.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a fully loaded thing for so many people, right? It makes me think of the story that you were just talking about the mom who, was kind of modeling that for her kids. And I was just thinking like, that's what they're learning, so they're going to carry that forward into another relationship because that's what they're seeing is like the dynamics. So, I mean, I do feel like it's so easy to just kind of like root that in conflict. And I think it's because, we're just naturally defensive. And I feel like, kind of the antidote to that is really just having open communication, even if that is to kind of set boundaries.
I find it so interesting that a lot of people don't have any conversation before they get married.
Yeah.
And I'll ask people on my show, did you check your partner's credit? Did you talk about things? Are you a spender? Are you a saver? And a lot of people will say, no, we just married for love.
Mm-hmm.
I had a client who married somebody, they didn't discuss it, and they had some big refunds. They hadn't filed some returns, and we filed 3 or 4 years of returns, and there was about $40,000 in refunds coming.
Wow.
Well, they didn't show up. Well, it turns out that one of them had about $100,000 of student loan debt they had never paid and about $100,000 worth of credit card debt that they had never shared.
Oh, man.
And I actually asked the other person, are you angry? And they said, I actually married for better or worse, and we're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
I don't know that many people would do that.
That's a strong couple. I mean, just like, there's a reason that it's called financial infidelity because infidelity implies that there's some kind of a betrayal, some kind of a secret, something that's not being told. And I mean, really, at the end of the day, that is something that erodes trust in a relationship. And trust is really essential. If
Yeah.
you're going to try and stick together, whether it's a marriage or a partnership or whatever, if you're going to stick together for the long haul, you really got to feel like that person has your back. And it's really hard to do that when you also feel like there's some little thing that you have to insert there that you can't share or you got to keep secret or something like that.
Do you see a lot of couples where one makes more money than the other? And then uses it maybe as a way to like, I make the money, even though you run the household or whatever it might be. And then that causes the other person to say, well, you know what, I'm going to start my own little nest egg.
Yeah, I mean, I really feel like more so than that, I think that what the biggest trigger for kind of financial infidelity is just people that haven't had that conversation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yes, control of money can be a factor, but I mean, really, I think when people don't actually kind of agree on how that's going to be managed, that's really where it comes into play. So I think, any kind of financial situation or arrangement that you have with your finances, it's fine as long as you're both on the same page. It's when you're not on the same page, and that's why, I mean, love is wonderful, and we all want to have a relationship that's kind of founded on love. But at the same time, like, you can still have that relationship be as wonderful and as passionate, and also kind of figure out these details and just have that be like the subtext that we got out of the way. And I feel like that's what's really important, is just making sure that you're on the same page from the beginning.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'm thinking to a couple of workshops that I had, but one of the things that I've told people when I try and get them to start conversations, of course, shamelessly, I'll say, use my book, because at the end of each chapter, it goes through fear, it goes through emotion, it goes through family history. And those are all important components. If as a child I was shamed, or if as a child I was told, you can have whatever you want. If I have a fear of running out of money, or if I have a fear of not spending enough, like whatever those things are, that if they can go through and have these conversations, how do you encourage people to start these conversations? Because they're scary and they're loaded.
Yep.
They are loaded with emotions and trauma.
Landmines. And
Landmines.
past. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. That's a really good question. So, the first thing I think that we tell people is to accept that it's going to be a difficult conversation. Like, you just got to know it's not going to be easy. It's not like a by the way. Also keep in mind how you're doing that. I heard something really interesting one time at a relationship kind of event that I went to. And they said, like, when you're think about when you're in a car and you're driving next to each other, what you're doing. You're in a vehicle that is propelling itself at a very high speed, and anything can potentially happen. And so there's like this subconscious part of you that has to be ready for anything. And you're also not facing each other as a couple. And so that person that was teaching this session was saying, like, never have an important conversation when you can't look at each other and there is the potential for like anything to change at any moment. That is not the right time to hit somebody up about like talking about your money, right? Or talking about a delicate subject. So I try to always keep that in mind, and just so understand that it's going to be difficult. Think about what you want from the conversation, and then really importantly, don't sabotage and don't set traps, right? Like, you don't want to catch someone up in doing something that you feel or suspect that they've been doing, and then expect to have a productive conversation. Like, really try to approach this from like, I want to solve this problem together. I want to keep this relationship together, and then also get on the same page. So it doesn't, if you haven't had, like, nobody's perfect, and the chances are you actually haven't had this conversation with the person that you're in a relationship with already. And if you haven't, that's okay. It's never too late to gain ground, to get on the same page, to figure out what your values are, and to figure out how you want to operate, right? So don't say that it's too late and so I can't do it. Anytime now is the right time. Anytime is the right time to have this conversation. And then, when we talk about infidelity of any kind, really there is a loss of trust. We talked about that before. So understand that you're going to have to rebuild that trust together, and do that by having a lot of conversations and being really transparent. It's really just set the example for each other about how you want this relationship to improve and to move forward, and just give it a shot.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I think that part about difficult conversations is we have to learn how to stay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so often in this day and age, we run.
Yeah.
And if we know it's uncomfortable, we know it's difficult. And if we can learn to tolerate like what's coming at us, the judgments, the triggers, and know that we've just both got some history, that if we can just keep breathing, take a lot of breaths. And also, I think it's important in the timing. Like, let's not have this conversation after you just got fired.
Right.
Let's not have this conversation in the middle of a crisis. And it might even be on Monday. Hey, do you think this weekend we could set aside 20 minutes and then not make each other wrong? I had this woman that came to me and she said, my husband won't get on board with me. And I said, well, probably as long as you keep going, when are you going to get on board with me and do this right? He's never going to get on board. Maybe you could approach it from, I'm really trying to get my financial stuff together, and I'm wondering how I can get you to support me to be a better me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She went, oh my God, I could do that. Right? Because the defenses are down when we engage people to actually help us instead of you. That we have to find the we and the place where it's me.
And model the behavior, right? Model the behavior that you want to see. So that's exactly right. You want to bring somebody along with you, but usually people will be able to do that a little bit better if you don't turn the spotlight on them, right?
Right.
They don't want to say, like, nobody wants to be told, like, let's talk about your problems. You know, let's talk about let's talk about a strategy for me, or let's talk about something that we can do together that will make us happier. That's a much better approach.
Yeah, and so for me, I find that if I engage people to come with me instead of me focusing on what they're not coming up to terms with, you know, I've already read the book and I've already done the work. Yet we're not going anywhere.
Right.
Right. What's the goal? To win the kudos points for having done the work, or am I in the long-term relationship for this?
Yeah. Do you want to be the right person, or do you want to be the happy person, or the happy couple, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so important. Well, we are at our Fast Five.
All right.
We're going to just shift the energy just a little bit.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask you, these are personal questions for you.
Okay.
So what's the most expensive thing you ever bought that did not meet your expectations?
Oh man. Okay, I know it because when I was in MBA school, I was super poor. I was paying for my own education. I always had been. And so there was this one event that we had where one of the coveted internships was Nordstrom's. And we went to this Nordstrom's thing that they were doing, some event, and they of course were using this as an opportunity to sell to us. And I really felt like I had to buy something or else I wasn't going to fit in with this group. And it was one of the few times where I've actually totally caved to that pressure. And I bought this jacket, and I can't even say how expensive it was now. I just can't even say it out loud. But I bought this jacket, and I was like, okay, this is gonna change my life. This one jacket, and it's still in my closet, and I've probably worn it in the 10 or 11 years since I graduated. I've probably worn it 3 times. It's not even a full jacket. The sleeves don't even go down to my wrists. It doesn't keep me warm. It was the silliest to this day, I'm still so disappointed in myself that I did not have the guts to just be I am not spending more money than I should on a dumb piece of clothing from Nordstrom.
That's funny. So you can say no. It's allowed.
Yes. Be brave.
Be brave. If you had one word to describe your relationship with money, what would it be?
Ooh, one word to describe my relationship with money. Dynamic.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Besides taxes, what is one thing you really hate spending money on?
It's interesting that I gave the Nordstrom story because I really don't like spending a ton of money on fashion. It's just not my thing. I'm like, you paid $300 for jeans and I can get serviceable jeans for $50.
Right.
I just am never going to be a brand chaser. So sometimes people ask me what I'm wearing and where it's from, and I'm like, Target.
Yeah.
I am not a fancy person.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. If you won the lottery, hit it big, would you keep it a secret or would you tell people?
That's a good question. I'd probably tell a select group of people, and it would probably be just the people that I was giving money to, because I feel like if I won the lottery, what I'd really want to do first and foremost is make other people's lives better, really surprise some people with some things that they either need or really want that I'm close with. So I'd have to disclose to those people, or else they'd be like, "Are you a drug dealer?" And
right.
I don't want to get turned in for anything. So yeah, I would say a few people, but I'd probably keep it pretty quiet.
That's awesome. So besides the Nordstrom story, are there any other financial regrets that you have?
Yeah. Well, I will say, the only other thing that I can think of is, financing my graduate degree was something that I really went into thinking more about the school that I wanted to go to, as opposed to what I was going to have to deal with in terms of the student loans afterwards.
Right.
So, if I wasn't a 20-something that was trying to make this decision with far too little information, I would have probably done things much differently.
Yeah.
So that is something that I would say, I'm grateful for the education, but I wish that I had taken a different approach to financing it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think there's a lot of people out there, they want that, the brand name of the college,
yes,
where they could get the same information maybe at community college,
yes,
or they're going into something that doesn't require it.
Absolutely.
So think about that before you go into college,
yes,
student loan debt. Real quick, what is a piece of practical advice or a piece of financial wealth wisdom that you can share? Because it's our M&M spot, our sweet spot.
I love it. Yeah. So this one was super easy for me to think of. I think that, every time I've gotten an increase at NEFE, or every time I've got a bonus or something like that, or in any of my jobs, the first thing I do is I increase the amount of money that is automatically going into my retirement savings accounts or my other savings accounts. So those always come out before I see my regular paycheck, and that way I'm saving more. Like the amount that I'm saving for retirement just increases automatically, and I don't even see it. So rather than saying like, oh great, when I get this bonus, I'm going to sit down and figure out how much, just like plan for the fact that you're going to get that, or plan for the fact that you're going to get that raise beforehand, and like automatically have that money go somewhere else so you never see it and you never miss it.
That's awesome. Well, I know we're coming to the end here, but Chelsea, what I've really been hearing today is a lot of openness and a willingness to explore versus, especially with couples, and not this who's at fault and who to blame. And even in your own life, I hear you saying, okay, that was regret, but I don't hear you saying, like, I need to beat myself up for the rest of my life.
Absolutely.
It's not too late to jump in the game of getting better informed about finances and making choices. Like, wherever you are, today's the day to just make an improvement. Even one little baby step towards a better financial future can be achieved. And I love that you're passionate about educating people. It's so important. People, you're not alone. There's nothing to be ashamed of. There is help. You just have to reach out with your left or your right hand, or pick up the phone, or go to the internet. And we can all have more financial literacy in our lives. There's no shame. And Chelsea, I just appreciate that NEFE is out here sponsoring this, and that you're out there really trying to actually make a difference for people that out there who don't have the tools.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I totally agree with what you said. I mean, every day is a chance to do something different. Every day is a chance to be and do better, to be better as a couple, to do better as a couple, to be better for yourself. Right. So don't be ashamed. Don't feel like you have to hide things. Just take a new opportunity and a fresh start, because we have a chance every single day to do that until we don't have any more days.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was great to talk to you.
Great talking.